Hi guys, it's Josh Rubin here at Douglas Elliman back in New York with my friends Jeff Thibodeau and Darren Langille of Redline, Canada. How you guys doing today?
Fantastic. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really excited to have you guys because the market's starting to turn here a little bit in New York, and I'm sure you guys are feeling it as well in Canada. Tell us a little bit about what you guys are experiencing just in the last week or so.
You want to take that, Darren?
Can I go first?
Yeah, sure. I'll take it.
Okay.
I'm the in-house analyst, but yeah, I mean, we're experiencing the same thing. I think all the major states are, and all in North America, which is like mid-March, everything got locked up. Transactions dropped by about 50 to 60% for 6 to 8 weeks, and then it's slowly the buyers have been returning back to. We're not quite back to normal. We're maybe a week or two behind the American markets, but yeah, we're in the same boat as you.
Cool. Yeah, I know you guys are in different places. Redline is pretty dynamic that way, and that Jeff, you're based in Toronto, and Darren, you're out in Calgary, right?
Correct. Yeah. We're Calgary's about 1.1 million people in the greater area we serve. We are seeing that we're just about at March. Like when we went to lockdown, our market has kind of gotten back to that state. So we see ourselves as a full 2 months behind the actual market, but the trend is good. It's going the right direction. Are we going to get all the way there? I don't know. And how quick?
Yeah. Well, I think no one really knows, right? We're all sort of operating a little bit of a vacuum depending on how hard hit our respective markets are, by the pandemic. But it's interesting that even though you guys are north of the border, you're still, pretty well impacted by it. Even though, Jeff's in more of a metropolitan area, and Darren, you're, sort of a little bit more of a widespread market, right?
Well, yeah, actually, I'm kind of outside of the Toronto area by about an hour, so we're in like a feeder city. We're part of the general commuter area, but our town, like as we sit right now, there's only 9 active cases, and 5 are in the hospital and 4 are identified at home. So at the local level, it doesn't feel very dangerous out there, but we're under all the same restrictions that a major city like Toronto or you guys in New York are under, with stay-at-home rules and limitations on our business. So it's actually quite strange, to be honest.
Yeah, I can imagine how it might be a little strange to be in a community which, directly speaking, is not as impacted by the virus, but you're still under the same restrictions as the metro area. I mean, do we think that these restrictions have actually helped limit the spread, and maybe that's what we're sort of operating under, the sort of false pretense that it's really not an issue in communities like yours?
Oh no, definitely. I mean, I think everything we've done as a smaller community, and there's tons of cases only an hour down the highway, right? So I think our community's done an incredible job of listening and locking down, even though it didn't feel like it was an imminent threat here. So our healthcare system locally hasn't been overwhelmed, and that should be a good sign that we can start to get back to regular old life before this thing's over. Yeah.
Now, Darren, out in Calgary, are you seeing that the buyers and sellers are sort of apprehensive to commit to either listing or putting in offers? Or is it more or less, I hate to use the cliche term, is it more or less business as usual?
No, we experienced a lot of what you guys did, and across the states, we saw an incredible drop down to the place where we were about 70% off of where we should have been in that period, say that first couple of weeks of April, where everybody, I call it the shock, was happening. But now it's the pending deals, like the deals under contract, are just as far along as we were starting this. So we've seen Calgary seeing an appetite to shake this off a little bit and get back to trying to make their buying and selling plans a reality. It's not where we want it to be, but it's surprising how quick it has come back. And our agents have seen it across the board with listings, pendings coming to market.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty optimistic given the bounce that we've seen in the equity markets and what we might experience here once things do open up. We're actually starting to see an uptick in online activity. I'm working on 2 deals right now that we sort of did under the dark of night, if you will. and we're seeing some listings coming on the market. We're ramping them up, doing some marketing here. So I'm optimistic that we'll see a nice little rebound, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see one of the busiest summers that we've experienced. What do you guys think will be the sort of climate upcoming in the next 2, 3, 4 months?
Well, Darren and I have slightly different challenges in our markets. In the Greater Toronto area, it's been a very booming market, and we've been pressed with very low inventory levels. So one of the challenges with this is that it paused both supply and demand. So inventory is actually lower this year than it was last year, even though transactions are down. A lot of it doesn't make sense to an analyst. So I'm feeling that same pace as you, Josh. And now I'll let Darren speak for himself. They've got compounding issues with oil prices and Calgary that may have a different impact over there.
Yeah, that's right, Darren. I know that Calgary is really rooted in the energy sector, and of course, with the crazy oil market that we've seen earlier this year, I should say, with oil going negative, where you actually had to take delivery of it if, God forbid, you should own some of those contracts. What did that do to your market?
Yeah, we were already pretty beaten down since 2014. We have really struggled to get back to some confidence around consumer confidence in our market. This is certainly not helping. The conversation, though, has been mostly focused on COVID along these last 2 months. And it's crazy to think that among negative oil prices, that is second or third in the conversation. I think Calgarians are just used to this low energy price point, and we have some internal politics within our country that are really hurting us and our ability to get our product to market. So yeah, it's there, and it's a new reality, but our big companies have had to be incredibly lean for 5 or 6 years to maintain operations under a general global low oil environment. This was just a new level that we had never experienced before.
Yeah. So you have a double challenge there between the pandemic and the virus, and then you also have the energy sector, which has been hurting for the last couple of years. I can only imagine what it must be like to operate in that environment.
Yeah, there's one good news story that continues to come out, as Jeff and I are very big data geeks in a sense that we look at this stuff pretty heavily and like to position our agents ahead of the market and with some knowledge. And we had an incredible high amount of inventory, which was a lot different than what I know Jeff experienced, and as well as what a lot of the great American cities are experiencing. So our inventory was oversupplied, and this has become a giant reset button for us. We currently sit in our market about 23% less than we were at this point last year, which is exactly the reset we needed to get our supply and demand back into a good correlation so that we don't have future price declines.
Huh. And so where does that translate in as much as an absorption rate is concerned? Because we in real estate often refer to inventory levels based on absorption rates, which is, of course, the number of months that it would take to absorb the current level of supply.
Yeah, if we based it off of April's numbers, it was horrible. And our real estate board spoke to it being 10 months of supply. But wow. Again, I think it's a bit of a false number, because I would never correlate off of the worst month in history to what the trends will come. As we know, this is a pause. It's not people didn't find their real estate elsewhere for the last 2 months, like a hamburger joint or something else you had to go and consume, right? They paused, and this will come back. And we are seeing it this weekend. I put a home on the market. It went in multiple offers. In this situation, it can still happen despite us being hit from oil prices, stocks, as well as, of course, the pandemic.
Yeah. And so, Darren, the house that you listed this past weekend, that you went into multiple offers in this environment where you have almost 10 months of supply, what do you attribute that to? What made it what made it different than the rest of the houses?
Well, like you guys have been talking about it, there is this pent up demand, and May long weekend here in Canada. We have a holiday here today. We've been wanting to get out, and people have been wanting to make their life happen again. So it is priced well. Of course, we market well. That's the obvious here with us at Redline. But people have been waiting, and as you know, buyers come out usually before sellers do, and there's this little situation right now with our inventory being so low that it's causing this to happen. Another one of my agents was showing 9 homes over the weekend, and 5 of the 9 were under contract before she could go view them. So,
Wow.
because the supply has switched so much, it's created an unlikely, almost seller's market. I don't even want to say that because I'll get smacked beside the head. But the reality is the data is showing that there's this little pocket to buy and to sell, right now that's starting to ramp up.
Sure. That's pretty interesting that you're seeing this sort of almost this transference of power, right? This shift because the inventory is contracting, and then you're seeing buyers come out, as you put it, ahead of the sellers. I actually think that we're going to see sellers on the sidelines pretty much across the board, and it's not going to be until September that they realize, hey, you know what? It's actually the water's clear. We can jump back into the pool. And then, of course, here in the United States, we're going to see the elections impacting confidence going forward. And so we're going to see a little bit of a waffle there in the fourth quarter here in the United States. But you guys don't actually have anything like that, do you, Jeff? You don't have a presidential election this year, do you? Or prime minister?
And our politics don't tend to affect the market as heavily as your guys switch between, potential party swings. But we do, I think we're all still waiting to see what the economic impact still to come, with all the people out of work, even if we're going back to work soon, some of those jobs aren't returning, and some people's confidence isn't returning for another year or so. So it's going to be interesting to see like what percentage of transactions just are evaporated from the 2020 market rather than, ultimate price drops or anything catastrophic. I think we're just going to see a 20 to 30% retraction in total transactions this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you look at the sort of stay-at-home order, coming into effect, about March 13th, which was a Friday here, and then if we get back into the swing of things on or about, say, June 6th to June 15th, that's about a quarter, right? So for you to say 20 to 30% retraction, that's pretty much on point, because we've seen about a 70 to 80% drop in contract volume just while we've been at home. Things are still happening. They're happening on a more opportunistic level based on what we're experiencing here in New York City. So between the time that we're sort of out of the workforce, not able to show homes, and the retraction in contract sign volume, I wouldn't be surprised if that's right on the money there, Jeff. So in your area, sort of Redline in the Toronto metro area, what are you seeing in terms of volume, just in the last couple of months? I mean, are you actually able to show homes, or do you have to sort of stay away?
Yeah, I mean, luckily, right when the whole shutdown happened in our province, we as realtors and lawyers, title offices, land registry offices were already part of an essential workers list that had already been pre-established. So it only took a day to kind of confirm that. So we kind of had a 1 day of pause where we didn't know, the stake of our licenses. But then after that, it's been up to all individual contractors and brokers to, follow social distancing rules. Open houses in my province were made illegal, but we had already stopped them a week and a half in advance at our company. So it's really the consumers that are deciding if they feel comfortable either listing their house and potentially having strangers walk through it, or if the buyers are comfortable to be out there. But legislatively, we've been allowed to trade through the whole thing.
Wow, that's great, because, in New York here, we were deemed essential pretty early on in the process. But there's one caveat in that we can't actually meet people to show them the house. So yes, we're essential, and so we're supposed to be doing so virtually. And so if somebody wants to see a listing, we can do one of 3 things. We can either go to the listing ourselves, show it via FaceTime or a similar app so that, we're interacting with the consumer and telling them about it. Or we can have a video walkthrough, and we can schedule a Zoom call on which we can play that video walkthrough for the buyer. Or we can do, send them a 3D tour or a link to the Matterport or a similar application tour for them to see it. So it's been a little bit of a challenge, and there has been rumors of agents getting fined for actually meeting prospective buyers and prospective tenants So it's a little dicey. In fact, I spoke to a colleague of ours this morning who told me that he had actually heard of the Department of State, which of course is the governing body for licensure in New York State, revoking licenses simply because people were continuing to show homes. So we certainly don't want to come on the wrong side of the Department of State. And then we have our friends in Pennsylvania who are actually still deemed to be not essential. So they can't do any activity surrounding real estate. They can't show, they can't list a house. It's very cumbersome. So clearly people need to buy and sell, but I think that the more that we're not able to actually help people is the more pent up demand that there will be. I mean, I went and got a haircut a couple of weeks ago. Even haircuts are illegal. So I went to a basement speakeasy place to get a haircut, and I see that Darren's hair there is the longest I've ever seen it. But you're looking pretty stylish there. Look at that, Jeff. And I know last week you had a beard that you shaved off. So times are changing, but we're seeing a lot of changes afoot in just how we live our lives and how we're able to sort of help our clients.
It's been really challenging because housing is one of those things that from the outside, sure, a lot of transactions can seem non-essential. Like you don't have to move. You didn't have to put your house up for sale. But like a lot of people who have been involved in the sale process realize that it's a big moving ship. If you've started the move process, you can't just pump the brakes on it. You could be left homeless in between two houses, or you could be left owning two houses. And you may be relocated through work or other reasons financially. So it's really important, I think, that real estate is deemed an essential service, but then it requires us in the industry to behave as professionals and not use that as a free pass to just go and have business as usual.
Right. I mean, there's a fine line because, this past weekend, there were articles in the New York press about people going to bars and, the bars couldn't actually host them inside. So they were doing the so-called delivery pickup of an order that was placed prior, and people were coming together with their friends and they were getting the drinks and stuff through a window or an open door with a table set up in the opening, and they were just hanging out outside of the bars because it was a beautiful summer-like weekend here in New York City. People are clearly congregating both in situations like that and in beaches and parks that are reopening. And so it's definitely a little bit of a dicey proposition just because we're really not out of the woods yet, are we?
No, I mean, if you think about everything we've all done as a society to pull through together and work this stay-at-home order to our benefit, the virus hasn't gone away, right? I mean, we have to, and Jeff and I have really tried to lead the company from a place of empathy and to lead in with that so that we can filter our decisions and how we would guide our agents and decisions we, have to make as company owners through that filter. But again, Jeff mentioned it really nicely in the fact that the consumer's behavior is starting to change and open up. And of course, in a case like this, I think from a business owner, it is nice to go with the consumer and ride that wave rather than try to be in front, because that could cause a really difficult position for a company to be in, because it is a very sensitive situation. Each one of us are one arm's length away from somebody who's had an extreme effect with this disease. So.
Yeah, and being in New York and it being such a sort of a focal point for the pandemic, I've known quite a few people who have either had it or been directly impacted by it. A couple of colleagues actually who didn't make it, unfortunately, and so our thoughts are obviously with those who have been directly impacted by it. But it's really important now more than ever, when we see a glimmer of hope, that we don't take advantage of it and put the last 2 to 3 months to waste. But you as company owners not just have your own immediate business to think about, but also a number of agents. So talk to us a little bit about Redline and the culture that you created in the family. How many people are under the Redline umbrella now?
Yeah, we've been, it's been a great ride really since 2017, middle 2016. Jeff and I decided to partner in together. He had an incredible operation out in the GTA area, and then we were in Calgary. Collectively now, I think we sit about 125 agents in our two markets. Between the staff, we probably have 15 staff, and then I run a property management group as well. And both Jeff and us in our markets run a pretty decent investment division focused to support that side of the business as well. So yeah, it's been a really incredible thing to bring Jeff in and his skill sets into our company and make Redline what it is today, which is a lot different than kind of what I started at when I met you back in 2013. So
Yeah. And so when we met, Darren, did you actually have your own brokerage, or were you under the umbrella of another company?
no, we've had ours since 2009. We knew we just didn't fit in anybody's sandbox really early on, and my founding business partner Brett and I started working together as early as 2005. So I was a team, and we were a team-based brokerage when I met you, as large as 13 agents, and that was as big as it was, but it was a significant size team in our market anyways back then. And then we changed the model to go with what we call our ultra service model, which was basically taking all the things that you and I know about building a team and bringing that under a model where all the agents at the brokerage can benefit, and they're no longer forced under a team scenario, but they can utilize the things like marketing, administration, concierge, technology that you as a team leader, like under your model, have to supply. So we do that for the whole brokerage.
Wow, that's a fantastic model and great concept there. And it seems to have done well now that you have over 120 people working with you who clearly believe in the philosophy.
Yeah, it's been fantastic, not without its challenges, and we continue to evolve. But this just like any other pandemic or situation forces you to evolve. And Jeff and I have been having a lot of fun with seeing what the next wave of Redline might look like. But I'll leave Jeff to talk on a few things as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, Jeff, when you and Darren came together, talk to us a little bit about what you had been doing in your business up until that point.
Yeah, well, Darren, we all met. It's probably not a secret to a lot of the viewers through the Tom Ferry coaching organization. And Darren and I were both team leaders. He was leading a team-based real estate brokerage. I was building a team inside of a national franchise in my city. And we had just come together as mastermind friends. But then what turned from like exciting calls every week to we realized we were both just complaining a lot every week. And I'll give Darren the credit to say he didn't want to go ahead and grow the team any bigger. He said, we got to make some changes and figure that out. And that's when we kind of decided, hey, let's, instead of just being buddies, let's go into business together. So it's been really cool to transition too. We kind of took my team from, it was just 3 people, I guess, on day one that came over. One became my business partner here, and the other joined us as an agent. And then we kind of hit the reset button and regrew the brokerage. And it's been fun. I think I feel like home now. It feels like the job was designed exactly for me.
Wow. And so I know that you just based on our experience, Jeff, interacting with one another, you can get pretty down and dirty into the nuts and bolts of operations. And how does that sort of help support the company? What types of initiatives have you done individually to help grow the Redline brand?
Yeah, I mean, I like working. I like being here at this desk. This is my home office. And so I'm a tinkerer. I just spend my days in and out of all of our systems, even still trading. The last few weeks, I stepped in to serve some of my own clients just to feel the client empathy and feel what it's like to deal with this situation so we can make sure our solutions are really tangible. They're not just theoretical. So yeah, I love hopping in there, and some of the things that have been exciting, we implemented even before COVID. We created a virtual workplace where all of our agents in very geographically different locations can all communicate, and we can broadcast messages like this all internally to them. Our administration staff was already half working remotely prior to COVID. So it was kind of cool to see that a lot of the things we built into our brokerage model just for our own needs, we're already really well positioned to deal with this, we can't get together anymore scenario. And now we're trying to continue to evolve it with that exact same challenge you talked about earlier, Josh, which is, if we can still show a house, but we prefer not to, obviously, with the virus still out there. And, we don't want to infect our families or a client or a seller's home. So it's moving later in the process or potentially after an offer. So innovating on all the new media and how we capture that and deliver it potentially to sellers and buyers. It's been really cool because it feels like the gas pedal's down on innovation right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you put it perfectly. Innovation. And there are going to be a lot of innovations that come out of this time that we're, forced to be away from our, colleagues and clients, but yet still find a way to sort of push the process forward, whether it be buyers and sellers or colleagues and meetings and, coming up with various strategies in a, more corporate environment. We're all coming together. And one of the main concerns that we're coming away from these metropolitan areas is whether or not these workplace habits and cultures are going to be impacted by, of course, being able to work at home. And are people still going to necessarily come into the workplace in order to, communicate and interact with each other? And what's that going to do to urban living? So I think that, going forward, New York City is always going to be New York. 6, 12 months, 18 months down the line, there will still be fantastic restaurants. Broadway will be opening back up. There will be events, whether it be, sports events, concerts, etc., back at Madison Square Garden. So I think slowly but surely, we're going to see this almost renaissance of New York City. And I think that there will be a lot of good that comes out of this. We don't want to go through this entire process and come out of it sort of in vain, which is to say that we're not going to learn from it or, have sort of renewed hope and awareness of our surroundings, but at the same time have sort of benefits that come out of it. So there's been a lot of discussion about transportation. They're saying avoid public transportation. Well, why not get on a bike? Well, it's all about safety. And I read this morning, in fact, that bike shops just in the New York City area have experienced just in the last 2 months sales that they usually experience inside of a whole year. So, there's a lot of innovations that come out of this. Have you guys seen anything specific on your day-to-day life or in your business that is sort of, a reflection of that?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a reset button on our lives as well, right, Josh? But, Jeff led the way in our company. We have a really strong culture. One thing about Redline is that we really synergize, collaborate together, like a super team in a sense, but our agents aren't on a team. So we've always been very tight. We've been open to sharing. It's been a place where people can ask questions and not feel silly, and they ask each other a lot. So losing that was maybe a bit of a fear for us, but we started a daily huddle, and it's been going ever since state of emergency started, where we've done a daily report, and Jeff took the lead to speak about the updates in the area, the marketplace needs, the opportunities as agents, how we can work through this. And we've both maintained this for the last 60 days to maintain our cultures. And the feedback we get from our agents is that it's really nice not to feel like you're on an island, because we've been forced to be in our little kind of prisons in a sense, and locked away from everybody's the handshakes and the smiles that you get to see at the office. We have beer on tap in ours, but Jeff's got beer beside him, right? So there's a lot of things that we've done to try to keep that going. And I know our Redline agents have come out of this with more optimism, I think, because of it. And I got to give Jeff credit to start that idea. At first, I thought, oh, that's going to be some work. And then now I don't want to let it go. It's been so fun. So.
Huh. And can you tell us a little bit about the huddle and sort of what you discuss and different topics that you might cover?
Yeah, I mean, it really, it came out for me in the early days of this whole scenario. I found myself seeing all this variety of news and realizing just how overwhelming it must be to get your information and try to sort through it. So I took that on to be my role. I was like, I'm going to go straight to the scientists and to our prime minister and to our local governing bodies and get the direct reports. And I'm going to be the one that distills it down and gives my team the truth. So at least at my team, there's going to be the least amount of panic, was my goal from day one. So it centers around a lot of the same stuff you kind of see like your governor does, which is just report the truth, like pull the numbers up, talk about them frankly. Don't try to make any big predictions, but say, here's how we deal with this. And here's when we think the next phase of it's about to change. And here's how we're going to deal with that, and just try to be as adult to adult as possible and get everyone through this. It's like none of us caused this or asked for it or deserve it. We're all in it together. So let's just link arms and march through, right? Yeah, absolutely. So you guys are basically just focused on the data and the facts.
So you're sort of educating the Redline team day to day, and here's what's come on the market, here's what's gone pending, here are the price reductions, here's what's closed, which I really enjoy, and that's one of the things that we started to do, and just reporting on the reality of the market. Yes, it's true that there have been a few renegotiations. Sellers prefer certainty, and buyers want to know that they're doing the right thing for themselves. But at the same time, there have been a number of closings here in the New York City market. And there have even been some things that have come on the market because it's a good time to list as a seller. If you think about wanting to stand out, why not stand out now? People are home, people are searching online, and the nesting instinct that we all have is higher because we're forced to stay in these spaces that maybe are not ideal for us or our families.
Hey, I'm going to add to that too. You were saying before about New York coming back, and I think it's everything. Everybody wants to come back, and Darren and I both, even our own home offices, we have these big open concept rooms we call culture centers, where we gather. We have multiple meetings a week, and these wide open picnic tables and configurable furniture, like Darren was saying, beer on tap. And my agents want to come back. They want a meeting. They want a live training. So while all this technology is great, I think the overwhelming human desire to get back together face to face is going to overwhelm and trump everything. That's what we're all pushing towards. I don't think any of us are going to be that comfortable to sit on these Zoom calls for the next 2 years. So I think the main thing is us all figuring out how to respect each other's space. You're asking what was going to stay. I hope it stays that when we feel sick, we stay home, regardless of it's coronavirus or anything. And all these just little behaviors we're adapting. The way the grocery stores are putting up barriers and stuff. I'm like, I hope all that stuff sticks around, and we're just a healthier, more respectful society of each other's personal health. Because people were dying of sickness before this one too, and we were coughing on each other. We're all going to work sick. That's pretty wild. So I hope that's the big change that comes out of all of this.
Yeah, we always referred to each other as our work family, but when people are sick, oftentimes I have to say, hey, if you're feeling sick, it's not a big deal. Let's just stay at home, because it's not just about you and your ability to perform. We trust that you'll perform whether you're here or there. If you have something to do, we'll get it done, and we'll get it done as a team, because it's the old adage, there's no I in team, right? So if you're on a team, let's have the team support you. I know that one of our guests recently told us, I believe it was Mark Pattison out in San Diego. He told us that there was an agent of his who had been in a mountain biking crash the day before. He called him from the hospital and said, hey, I have 7 or 8 appointments tomorrow. What can we do? Mark and his team stepped in, covered all the appointments, no problem. So, there's great benefits to being, in a team environment and, a culture like Redline.
Yeah, I think this whole thing's showing how important our social circles and our support networks have been, because it's at times like this, it's the people closest to you, your family, your neighbors, and hopefully, a tight group of coworkers that are all supporting each other. Because, I don't know about you guys, I'm not certainly waiting for the government to bail me out of this, right? Like, it's going to have to be, we're entrepreneurs, we're all business owners. We're going to have to work our way out of this, and like I said, we're all in it together. So it's one of those unifying things too. I hope you guys are experiencing that too, Josh, where it's pulling people together. And the news seems to want to pull everybody apart. But I think when you look on the ground and the way everyone's treating each other, it's actually, we're a little more compassionate and a little more helpful of each other because of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, guys, any parting words?
Yeah, I guess, I'll start to one little thing to carry on that I've noticed is, as we've, in Calgary just last week, we were told we started phase 1 of reopening, and you get out there and you start to interact, and people are quite excited about this. But the one thing I realized really quick is everybody's guards are up at a different level. And it's one thing I think as we get back out there and try to do what we do best and build these relationships, sell homes, all of that, is to continue to be really mindful of, I don't think we've all figured out our own new barriers yet, in that layer. And it's going to take a little bit as a society to figure that out. But I noticed there were some people wanting to high five me and give me hugs, and some that were, you could tell, were 6 feet apart. And I think that's the adjustment I think we'll have to go through, and know that in the past that might seem rude, but now, of course, we've learned to respect this personal boundaries we have, and I think as a whole we'll get better out of it. But Josh, thanks for doing these. I've been watching yours a ton. It's been really great to see. I love the fact that you're building this online community. I think it's very important, and I don't think any of that goes away as we transition. I've been telling my agents, don't put the pedal away from all the energy you've put into figuring out how to do this virtually, because that pedal is important, and you should never take the gas off. The old way, that's going to get thinner and thinner. So keep going, keep going with this. And thanks, Josh, for having us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Jeff Thibodeau and Darren Langille of Calgary and Redline Real Estate, thanks so much for joining us today, guys.
Thank you. That was great.